one of the most powerful questions that I've ever asked is, who did you have to be as a child to receive love? Because when we answer that question, we see the behaviors that we still do today. And it's not to say that they're all wrong and they all need changing, because many of them won't.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the question is, which of those serve us and which of those don't serve us? That honesty is where the work is.
Aside from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution. And we have here today someone that's been inspiring my evolution for quite some time now, Stephanie Smilas. Steph, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, dude, I got all the feels right now having you here today. I haven't been this nervous for a podcast in a while. And I don't know why that is,
Come
because
on.
I'm always comfortable around you. Then there's just the excitement, the unbridled excitement of just the power of where this conversation may go today. I know we have some of the best chats that I've ever had with you, and they definitely leave an impact, and they've changed my life for the better. So I'm excited for today. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. It's been amazing watching the Inspired Evolution grow from a little sparkle of an idea in your mind to what it is today. So
yeah,
I'm glad to be here finally. Gosh.
Yeah, you've definitely, I would say, I can't say you've been along for the ride. I would say you've definitely held me in places along the ride as well. So thank you. Guys, for those tuning into Steph for the first time, let me just quickly do the honors. She is a life enthusiast. Probably tells you why we get along so well. She is a light bulb moments junkie. That moment where you go, ding, I get it. Like those little epiphany moments. And Steph and I share a love for that in Mandala moments. And she's a potential seeker. She's a question asker and the founder of Unfold Consulting and the Unfold Your Potential movement. Steph, why is potential something that matters so much to you?
I think potential is the gold, because everyone has potential, and potential is malleable, right? We can work with, everyone can work with what they've got, and I think that that people don't realize their potential often. And I think not only is potential something that you're born with, it's something that you can always work on and grow and continue to work with. And I guess potential for me feels like, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter, what country you were born in or what social demographic you were born into, or anything, potential is what everyone has. So you can always work with that. You can always work with it.
It's interesting. There's so many questions that I want to go into from that place, and I know your journey as well, and maybe it's worth sort of paraphrasing bits of it for the audience, because I know you were, you went from, I don't want to say from mum, you're still a mum, but, from going from mum to going back into the corporate world and starting the corporate ladder again the second time around at the bottom, and then, like achieving so much in terms of like massive salary jumps because you were so clear on what, you wanted to achieve, and, really bringing your potential to the fore. And now you're running two businesses, 10xing revenues. Like there's a lot going on in your world. And I think it's amazing because I'm really inspired by when people are sharing themselves openly and authentically to help others, but they're also, I'm just going to say it, walking the walk and not just talking the talk about it, which is something that I really respect and love about you. The piece around potential, I find, and there's two questions I want to ask, so I've got a bit of an opportunity here. I'm going to run with the one that's closer to my heart. Do you think there's a spiritual aspect to that potential? Like, do you think, what are your thoughts on because if everybody is innately has potential, is there a spiritual aspect to that you look at, or is it just more like a 3D thing that every human has?
I definitely think there is. It's a really interesting way to put it, because I don't think I've thought of it like that before, despite how much time I spend thinking about potential and people. So, you, Amrit. I think there is a spiritual element to it, because I think quite often people are fearful of their own potential, and I think that really connecting with your own potential. But then the other side is true as well. People know they have more potential, or they understand that they could be doing more, but they don't take those actions, or they're not sure what step to take in order to, there's a lot of people, I think, that feel like they have unmet potential, and there's the other camp is that they just don't understand the potential that they have. So I think it's about connection to self. And I think once you're really connected to yourself, which is always a spiritual practice, I think, then really unleash your potential. Unfold it, let's say.
I love that. And I was going to ask, what do you think are the biggest roadblocks towards like people generally, and like you work with people, like pretty amazing people on this as well. So, but I'm hearing there, it's the connection to self is the big one, is the big roadblock in that space.
Yeah, I think that, connecting to ourselves more fully and more honest is really it's uncomfortable sometimes, right? And so it's hard work to do.
A lot of the time.
Yeah, I don't want to scare them all off. Okay, it's always uncomfortable. Okay,
no, it's not always. Sorry, I'm not.
It's not always. It's not always. But you've
Please,
got to. That's
you do
that
the
whole
talking. Yeah.
It's that whole cliche of you've got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, right? And as cliche as that is, it's absolutely true as well. So I think, and I think the other thing that's really, really important is that connection to self, almost like either it sounds really woo-woo and really hippie, and people are like, oh, I don't need to connect to myself, or and we're never taught to do this. Nobody ever says, hey, do you think you should connect with yourself a little bit more? Who says that? Unfortunately, not enough people. We're not taught it. Again, we're not taught it in school. Like everything important in the world, we're not taught it at school. We're often not seeing that in our parents because they were a different generation. And so where do we find, it's a completely foreign concept to a lot of people. So I think even understanding that you're not connected to yourself is the first step. And then realizing that you want to be, and that's the goal that will take you forward to what you, because there are people that are so successful out there, depending on what your definition is, by society standards, and they're absolutely miserable, and they're feeling unfulfilled, and they're not they're achieving all the things, but it doesn't feel like they're achieving things. And I work with those people all the time, and I see it time and time again. So it's about redefining success, really getting clear on what it is you achieve, and I think that you only do those two things when you really connect to yourself, and you find out what actually lights you up. And is that just earning more money, or being the CEO, or having this position of title of power, or is it something different? And those are big questions for people to ask themselves. And it takes a bit of bravery and a bit of guts.
Yeah, there's that Jim Carrey quote, right? Which I'm not sure if people have tuned into it, but he goes, "I wish everybody became famous so they knew it wasn't it." Yes. And it's I find it's a bit loaded though, because when you think about it, like some part of you still wants to go on the journey to sort of go, but is it really? Like, I want to find out for myself. There's
and I think,
sorry, please.
No, I was gonna say, and I think that's why I work with a lot of people who have already been there and done it, and they've been like, this is not my thing, right? This is not what I was hoping for, or what's missing, right? So what I would love to be able to do is to get people asking themselves those questions earlier on in the stage, right? I think I was really fortunate to I think I've just got a very curious mind naturally. It's a God-given gift, or universe, source energy part of me that's just innate.
Touch wood.
And
Super grateful for it.
So grateful. It certainly got me into trouble as a young one in school. They didn't like my questions, but I think if we all had that ability to start asking ourselves questions earlier, we could get onto the right path earlier, and that would be such a beautiful thing. And the other part to that, which is a completely different tangent, but I'll just mention briefly, is that if we started asking questions earlier, then we could get onto those paths early, but we could recognize the path that we actually want to be on and move towards it, rather than spending decades sometimes on a particular path just to realize that it's not really where we want to be. And it's really sad. I think that's really sad.
Yeah, I definitely feel that pain, having been in a similar space in, misaligned careers, and just the emotional wounding. There's really no other way to put it, that comes from consistently hitting yourself with that anvil of, like not showing up for something that's deeply in your alignment. The pain is real.
But also it's tough because if you've got a great job, you've done well in your career, you're in a good position, it's very hard to kind of go, this is not really working for me.
Yeah. And there's that famous quote which was like, there's the two most addictive things in life, like heroin and a recurring paycheck.
I've never heard that, but that is absolutely true. I mean, not that I've ever experienced one of those two things, but
you heard it here first, guys. No, I'm kidding.
No.
Part of me. I'm taking the liberty about pushing a bit too far in this podcast. But the key thing in there, and it was really beautiful as you were describing the power of questions and being able to ask them earlier. And I know from experience, having spent time, because we're really good friends, Steph's like total sister to me. And so in there, you've often taken time just going, sometimes I just ask a different question, Amrit, and you help me frame a question, which will then sort of go, oh yeah, that's expanded my thinking. Like I can see that I'm outside of the box I was previously in. And, it puts me in a different vantage, and potentially I'm moving into a bigger box, or maybe I'm moving into a bigger sphere, but it helps me unpin myself from where I currently am into a whole nother space. Now, it's interesting because I've feeling into your journey and how far you've been, going through motherhood, going through the corporate ladder and succeeding really well there, and then setting up one business, setting up a second business now, scaling them. Yeah, it was almost like, and pardon the poetry, or don't pardon the poetry, but I could almost see unfold consulting, every time you ask a question, you open up a petal almost of the flower that's helping you unfold. Is that, tell us a little bit about what unfold means to you. Am I tuning into it, or is it, what does...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, you are. Yeah, you are. Because I think every time we learn something new about ourselves, we do unfold another layer or another part, like the logo for the company is like an origami bird, right? Because it's folding and the unfolding. And the beauty of that is that, origami is, you start with a blank piece of paper, right? A square or rectangle piece of paper, and you can fold that into a million different things, which to me really symbolizes what we become through our lives, through all the folds that happen where we try to fit in, or we're told to do things a certain way, or we understand what society or our parents or our loved ones want from us. And then the beautiful thing about that is that there's always space to unfold. If it can be folded, it can be unfolded. And so unfolding all of you, the blank piece of paper is still there, right? Because that's what you started.
Which is our potential, right? Okay, I'm getting it. Yeah.
And I think perspective is something else that I'm so interested in, because what you were saying before about the you frame a question a different way, and then you step outside of it and you look at it slightly differently. That's shifting your perspective. And I think that is incredibly powerful, being able to just shift your perspective a little bit with slightly new information or something changed in the framework of the question. There's so much power in that too.
Steph, a big part of when I tune into, because I know your work intimately, empowerment is a massive piece in there, right? So like empowering your mindset, empowering your perspective, empowering your walk in the world so that you can like really just unfold your potential. At this juncture, the creases in the pieces of paper.
Yeah.
How many of these folds do we put in there ourselves? How many are society based? How many are culturally based? How many are family based? Maybe we don't have stats. Maybe you do have stats. I don't know. And then, navigating that without being like wholly, like I was creased by somebody else, like the disempowerment of the victim in there, but then also the empowerment of like being able to unfold. Like, can you talk to us about the rub between that? Because I always find it like a slippery one. It's like I got to acknowledge my stuff, but then it's not my stuff, and it's like
So I'll definitely answer the question, but the first thing that I'll say is that it doesn't matter how many times or how the paper is creased, because if you had a piece of paper that had never been folded and you had a piece of paper that had been folded a million times and unfolded, which one is more interesting? Which one is more captivating? Which one is more absolutely beautiful? And which one do you want to stare at more? That's the first thing I absolutely have to say about that. But secondly, your point of that, how much do I acknowledge and how much do I sit with and how much do I move forward? I think it always comes back to how much it serves you. So when and difficult emotions like grief, like sadness, are, should absolutely be acknowledged.
Yeah.
But how long we stay with them depends on how much it serves us. So if it serves you to stay with that for a certain period of time, of course, stay with it. But then at some point we have to come back to what we have control over and what we don't.
Right. And this is... Oh, sorry, please continue. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was saying that I can see this coming back full circle to that connection to self. To be able to even identify what serves us, like the connection to self being so instrumental to sort of go, oh yeah, I can, because it's such a, it's a grey space, right? What serves me may not serve you. What serves you may not serve me, and it's unique to the individual.
And I can't tell you how long to sit with something like grief. I can't tell you how you should feel if something horrible has happened to you, or how long you should sit with that. Or, I have friends that have had horrible traumas in their lives, and I sometimes see them making same mistakes again and again, and I want to grab them and shake them and say, stop it, this is what you're doing, don't you see that? It's not my place to do that, and I can't do that because I am not operating from the same place in my brain as they are, because I don't have their trauma, so I can't possibly expect to understand it. That doesn't mean that it's okay for anyone, I don't think, to sit in trauma forever. We all have trauma of some kind or another. If the most loved children in the world will have something also, right? So again, it comes back to what we have control over. Do we have control over trying to make life perfect? Do we have control over the things that happened in the past? If it's done, it's done, right? But we have control over how we choose to live our life every day, how much time we choose to spend with those thoughts, and how much airplay. Like your brain, you're in control of your brain. Believe it or not, that's people tell me a controversial thing to say, but you are. It doesn't mean that you get it right every day. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect all the time. I think that's an absolute illusion. But with practice, we can keep choosing the thoughts that serve us and the ones that don't, and get into better habits. And that's another subject to talk about for hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go there, right? Because, or not for hours, but honoring. Well, I could actually. We do talk about this for hours, so we'll try and encapsulate it for the audience. So in that, because I was going to say, the crux of the question is, if every person is unique and individual, and me going through my traumas is going to take my amount of time, you going through your stuff is going to take your amount of time, me experiencing my joys even is going to take my amount of time, and you going through your highs is going to take your amount of time. Why would I come to get coached on that? How does having someone hold space for me help?
I think because our perspective will always be jaded because of our experiences and because of what's comfortable.
Yeah.
And so having someone journal to that, look at things and give a slightly different perspective, or ask questions, as you said at the very beginning, in a slightly different way, or framing them in a different way, brings you out of your own space, or sheds light on something that you hadn't seen. You can't see, so often we can't see exactly what's in front of us because it's so in front of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So having someone hold space for that is fundamental. But for me, I think I always say to people that I work with, and I know that you have a very similar philosophy, it's that they have the answers. I can't tell them what to do because I'm not living their life. Right? I can ask them questions that make them think about things a different way, and I can ask them questions that shed light on things, and I can get them to start thinking about things differently. But it's still their thoughts, it's still their actions, it's still their choices. Nobody is ever beholden to anyone else on that.
Yeah, I find that like you said, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I often find myself saying to most of my clients as well, which is I'm no better than you in any shape, way, form or other. It's just, I'm just not in the soup that you've been brewing for the last, how many days, hours, years.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we're not in the soup, but we're looking at things. We're not only looking at things from a different perspective, but we bring our life experience to the fold, right? So, and I might see things slightly differently because of my lived experiences, and because of, I'm very much the observer. So I love to look at things, go, what about this? And what about that? Right? So there's experience there that you're lending from when you're having those conversations as well. So I think that's important it's not that anyone's any better, but it's that there's a whole different font of knowledge coming and going, but have you thought about it like this?
And therein lies the onus for people like yourself and myself to do the own self-awareness work, to look at our own folds, to understand where did they get creased into, how do I unfold them, right? So that we can continue to not have the answers, but at least watch ourselves unfold a little bit to then be able to support others in their unfolding. And it's,
it's ongoing. I don't think the work ever stops. And I think also the important thing that people often don't think about, I think, is that as much work as we do, we are habitual creatures, right? So however much you think you've worked on something and you've got it, and you're like, right, I don't do that anymore. I know that. I'm better than that. You can use that as a benchmark for when you're not doing your self-care, or when you are overtired, or when you are doing too much, because we fall back into those patterns and we catch ourselves doing, in thought patterns or behaviors that we used to do a decade ago. And we go, oh, am I doing that again? Really? Wow. I thought that I had done enough of that. And that's not a failing. That's an absolute win, because you've seen it and you've seen it sooner, and you go, great. Now let's choose not to do that, because we know that doesn't serve us very well. does it? We've already decided that. So obviously I must not be eating well enough, resting enough, doing enough meditation, getting enough me time, spending enough time with the people I love. And it's a flag almost, you know. It doesn't mean that once you work on something, it's done. It's always happening. We get better at things as we move, but I think that it's a continuous learning.
Yeah, and I love what's precipitating for me is also, I don't want to say coaching's a hack, but I find in that space when we're trying to develop that connection to self, it's really helpful. I have found, even myself, having had coaches, being coached by yourself, being coached by others, you know, it's an amazing hack, because you're leveraging human connection for a sense of accountability to even like what feels like an intention towards yourself, you know, which is like, you know, I have this intention around untapping my unlimited potential. Yeah. And then you sign up and you make a commitment for something like that, right? And then all of a sudden I'm showing up on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis or a monthly basis, and that attention there's attention on the intention continues to ripple, right? Which is pretty remarkable when you start thinking about just how like the 1 degree sort of shifts land you in a plane in like very different cities given the length of time, right?
I love that analogy.
Yeah. Steph, one of the things that I have to ask you, and it's personal, but I'm just going to go there because, yeah, it's us. We're on a podcast. I know very few people that care as much as you do. There's like a deep sense of like empathy, care, and it's not just for individuals. Knowing, you know, well, I was going to say the direction, but it's more of a trajectory is what I'd say of your businesses. But knowing the trajectory of your businesses, and, you know, they're geared around the environment. They're also geared around, like you're caring about things on a massive scale. It's something that I personally find very inspiring. What inspires you to care so much?
Wow. I think, I don't know that I've ever actively thought about how much I care. I guess it must be something that just comes naturally. I think I am genuinely a supporter and a cheerleader, and I want to see everyone do well. And I think that comes from not being competitive at all. I really don't like competitiveness, and that may sound off, but I don't think we ever need to compete with each other. I think we all need to compete to be the best that we can be and to have the most impact in the world. And I think that some people don't understand the beauty and the joy that they give to the world, and the impact that they can have. And I think that if I can help them to do that, because I have a different set of life experiences or skills, then it's kind of my place to do that, you know, not just in the work that I do, but in, you know, helping people that are, you know, like the veggie box business. We try to employ people that are, you know, have been out of work for a long time, or are, you know, retired, or people that need work, right? So anyway, I'm going off on an
No, you're not. But the thing is, sorry, I'm going to stop you there, because what I'm hearing, sorry, I would never do that. But
no, you go.
The thing is, even as you're describing, it's like, yeah, it's an innate sense of care. What you're describing is caring, almost like, well, not even almost, as a moral obligation. Like, it's so it's deeply woven into who you are, Steph. It's an absolute, like, and I've been on the receiving end of it, yeah. So I personally know just how, well, yeah, special it is to have someone ask questions from a deeply caring place, because it also takes an insane amount of presence and listening to really listen to somebody and then spark the question that can help them shift. And for me, your propensity to be able to do that, I've always been, yeah, like I said, inspired by the level of care that you've always just sort of brought to a situation. Just going, yep, I'm like, tell me, and I just feel like it's not something I find everywhere in everybody. And even the way you described it just then, it was like, yeah, but it's a moral obligation. It literally came across as a moral obligation to care. Yeah.
So I was having a conversation with a good friend of ours, Sally, a few weeks ago, and I had been I've been talking to a person, but they were a person that I didn't know, and I was very impatient with them, very impatient. And I said to Sally, I said, I love my friends and I spend so much time with my friends. And I said, maybe when I get outside of my circle, I'm just not that empathetic at all. And I have no patience whatsoever. And she said, that's the most thing I've ever heard. And she said, you're one of the most empathetic people I've ever met. And I thought, oh, cool. Okay. I think it does just it's just part of who I am. I don't try even to care for people. The people that I love, I genuinely love and give everything to. So, and which obviously includes you.
Can I pull at that thread a little bit and just, go into that sort of conversational space that both you and I love? Isn't it interesting how much of our own gifts, like our real strength, we're completely blind to?
Yes.
Like what? Like of all the grand designing of all of this, maybe it's like an echo back to humility, but like, why would that be the way? It just blows me away that's the way,
I remember hearing, I was at a seminar somewhere, many years ago, and someone said, our most innate gifts we have absolutely no understanding of because they're just everyday to us. They're just our normal. They're just our default. And so, and that's, I absolutely think that that's true. And I think that potentially that's why we need community, because I think we do each have these innate gifts that we are just, our whole being leans towards without us even knowing, because it's just our default in a way. So, and I think that maybe if we were aware of it, we wouldn't do it so naturally.
And the sense of community that you're referring to has been one of an amazing tool even for myself, and I'm going to go there because I know so much of the dialogues that I hear from you are based around the balance between comfort and growth. And going back to the fold and the origami metaphor, it's almost like we cling to our folds because we know the shape of that fold so intimately that it's like that's my triangle, man. that's my jam.
Yeah.
Like, this is I may be bent out of shape, but this my shape. Right? And
look, and if you're happy there, that's fine. But the thing is that often people aren't. So it's when you're not, that's when it needs to be changed. Carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And no, that's perfect. And then I find in there, like, sometimes other people can, like, you may be unhappy, but you may not see like what other shapes are possible. And it's almost like having other people go, but you're not a triangle, dude. Like, I can see it, she can see it, he can see it. You're kind of coming home to this fact right now. And having that mirror is so powerful. So powerful. Another little random trippy question then. Long term, people like yourself and myself, if we lived in a dream world, would there even be a container such as coaching? Or would we just have really dope community everywhere for everybody that we could just reflect all this stuff back? We wouldn't need to be like, okay, yeah, go on.
I remember someone said to me once, what's the big aim, right? What's the big aim of this business of Unfold Consulting? And I said, like, what's the ridiculous thing? Like, if you could wave the moonshot. Yeah, right. It would be to live in a world where everybody took full responsibility for themselves. Imagine if we lived in that world where everybody took full responsibility for themselves, because that's magical and that's beautiful, and that's not blaming other people, and that's not being interdependent, and that's not worrying about other people's thoughts, and that's fully owning who you are and what you want to do, and obviously and moving towards that. And obviously we don't, squash other people on the way, but being fully yourself. I don't know how many people who are fully themselves.
Steph, the other day you shared a quote with me, and I'd love to hear you share it here again.
It's I'll have to paraphrase it because it
I want the paraphrased version, because I looked up the original version and it meant a lot to me, but the paraphrased version that you shared, maybe because of how close we are, it meant that much more to me. Please.
Yeah. So it's a Viktor Frankl quote, and he said, and again, something along the lines of, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power. I know the quote on that, but that is the essence of the quote. And that's the part that always stays with me. And I think that there's so much power in that. And that, again, it doesn't mean that we get it right every time. And it doesn't mean that every time something triggers us or we get angry that we don't react immediately. But it means that more often we can stop and go, hold on, how am I responding in this scenario? And what response serves me in this scenario?
Yeah, because we were nerding out on this, and you mentioned responsibility, and it's those little nuggets that help me so much, like from yourself as well, like just realizing that that space is my power, like between stimulus and response. And responsibility, it comes with, oh my God, just this gluckiness of baggage when the responsibility. I can feel like all the archaic baggage that it comes with. And then we were reveling on the dialogue between just how it could be, the way Sadhguru puts it, it's like it's response, ability. It's your ability to respond. Yeah, and then I can really, and when you shared, just between stimulus and response is your power. It's like, therein lies the golden jewel of practically, empowering ourselves, because I hear what you're saying. Everybody would take responsibility for themselves, and some people would be triggered by that. And it's like, no, but really the call is to, everybody would be empowered to have the ability to respond to life the way that they want to. And therein is your power. And it gave me such like a practical metaphor. It's like, every time I sit down, even just as something as simple as meditation, when I take the pause for the moment to just sort of go, and I'm not going to take my brain on that space and just come back to my breath, stimulus, response. I'm actually cultivating a sense of self-empowerment in every rep that I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Without doubt. And when I used to teach meditation a lot, and I would say to people, is it no problem when your brain wanders away, because you're making it stronger and you're catching your behavior and adjusting it. And that is what we do with, as we were saying before, no one's perfect. We don't get it right every time, right? But as much as we learn about ourselves, sometimes we slip back into those behaviors. But it's exactly the same process as meditation. We recognize it and we alter that path again sooner because of the practice and the repetitions that we're getting in meditation. And it bleeds over into everyday life as well. Absolutely.
I love our conversations. One of the things that I have to talk to you about today is communication. So, even just, I'm sort of going on a bit of taking a bit of a segue from that, when we, there's stimulus and there's response, and then, even just the way like we beat ourselves up, it's like, oh, like my mind diverted, and it's like, that self-talk, that like, oh, like I messed up, and it's like, no, hey, that was the good bit, like doing good. And like, for those that know you, like even from afar or as close and intimately as I do, dude, like communication is something that like I have never met a stronger champion for. Like just, really strong, clear, robust communication. Like you're a massive advocate for it. For me, it goes even deeper, witnessing that again, and I think with the depths of this conversation, we can sort of allude to it now quite comfortably, that it's not like our communication with others is definitely a reflection on our communication with ourselves. And you talk a lot about radical self-honesty. Tell us a little bit more about why radical self-honesty is so important to you and what communication to self means to you. And then potentially we can talk about communication as a whole more, but yeah, your self-communication and radical self-honesty, Steph, like, yeah, why does that mean so much to you?
Yeah, there's two
I'm asking
things.
the easy questions, aren't I? Sorry.
Don't hold back, because I wouldn't.
Well, it's you. I've got to make the most of my opportunity here.
There's two things that I'll mention, and then I'll go into them just so that I don't forget them, because there's so many places we could go with this. Yeah. One is being your own best friend and working on that. And the second is a really good friend of mine. I remember I was many years ago, I was having a bit of a struggle with something that I had done, and I didn't like the way that I had behaved in a scenario. And a really good friend of mine who is very true, very dear to my heart, Marion, said to me, nobody likes to be lied to. And it's even worse when you realize you are lying to yourself. And I remember going, wow. And it shook me to my core, and she was absolutely right. And I had to sit with that and work out why that had happened, and why I had allowed that to happen, and then move through making sure that, not even making sure, but choosing to not allow that to happen again, right? And the way that we do that is by being our own best friends. I had an amazing opportunity a few years ago when I had a quite a difficult time, a relationship breakdown, and a good friend of mine, we separated, and there was my default position in times of struggle is to go inward and to move away from everybody. That's my default. It's not often that I'll reach out, I'll reach in. And so and I went a little bit back to my angry teenage days, and I was in my mind going, well, all of you can, get stuffed. I will look after myself, and I don't need anyone, and you can all just go away. I've got
middle
this.
Finger. Yeah, got it.
But so in that part of me said, well, okay, if you've got this, then how do we have this? I need better friends. And if I need better friends, I will have to be my own best friend, because I want to be my best friend. And if I can't be genuinely, if I can't treat myself like I would someone that I loved and my best friend, then there's a problem there, right? So I started reframing everything I was thinking. At that point in time, I had horrific self-talk, very negative, incredibly negative. You wouldn't believe like the things that would go on inside my head. And so I said, okay, well, I'm only allowed to talk to myself. If I wouldn't say it out loud to my best friend, I'm not allowed to say it inside my head. And I was relentless in my catching myself with every single thing that I said. And it was exhausting.
I can imagine.
Incredible. It was incredible. I knew I had negative self-talk, but oh my God, did I not even realize scale until I started calling it out every single time. It was, and it was radical is what it was. It was radical self-awareness and self evaluation, I guess. And it brought me to a place of genuinely being my own best friend and knowing that I could treat myself in a way that was deserving of anyone else that I loved. And there's so much power in that. I can't tell you the amount of power in that, because that for me definitely put me on the path of that self-connection and genuinely being connected from a good place.
It's yeah. It's remarkable to hear you share that, because I remember the moment that honesty was sort of shared and dropped in on me in a similar way was I was sitting opposite a psychologist, and I'd just been diagnosed with depression, and she turned around to me and said, "You're going to be okay. You just need to adopt honesty." And it was almost like, it wasn't even almost like, she had pulled at the thread of like this rug that was just waiting to be like untethered, you know, like it was just like, and I was just like, I was already coming apart at the seams, but I had no idea like what it was. And it was literally this dishonesty. And it was so confronting to realize that I was dishonest with others, and exactly like your friend alluded, but that wasn't even, and there was so much apologizing even till today that is still there to be done to those that, you know, I blatantly was dishonest with. Yeah. But it pales in comparison to the level of self-deceit that was present in that process. Yeah. That going to work on that has been a lifetime's work, right? And just starting to go, okay, like, why, you know, and there's a whole bunch of, you know, we can go into why, but there's so much in there in terms of just going, okay, like learning to be honest with yourself. And it's not, like you described, it's not an overnight thing. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, like a switch, like now I'm honest. It takes work. Like, it takes real work.
And practice, because like anything you've been doing, if you've been doing one thing or anything a certain way for our entire lives up until this point, how can we expect that it will be completely undone in the matter of weeks or months or years even, right? But awareness is the first part, because then we just have to replace, like, it's like with talking to myself, every time I heard a negative thought, I replaced it with a positive. So there are triggers and there are ways that we can see, oops, I did that, I have to do this instead. And so we put those things in place so that we can move towards where we want to go. But it's practice, and it's being willing to strip all of that stuff back, because the reason that we're dishonest with ourselves is safety, right? We want to be safe. We want to stay in this safe little happy place. And so the brain will do whatever it takes to keep us there.
Yeah, to build the reference points around, it likes boxes. It sort of like puts itself into that safe space, because this was going to be the question that I asked was the self-deceit can be such a slippery piece to bring your awareness to, when so much of why you do certain things were programmed in when you were a kid, just looking for something that was pure and innocent, you know, and you were looking for potentially connection or love or attention, and, you know, you realize that, oh, you know, I would get it this way, and you're not even consciously making that decision, you're unconsciously making that decision, but then that seed grows into this tree, right, which goes, I'm like this now, and it's like, yeah, that's who I am. And it's like, yeah, but you're not. And like, no, but I am. And, you know, and like, and it's consistently perpetuating this lie about who it is, because that's how it found love early on, right? And then that has carried through, and then unfolding all of that, is where I'm hearing from you that that's where the radical honesty is so critical at the heart of this work.
I think one of the most powerful questions that I've ever heard or asked, or, you know, has come is, you know, who did you have to be as a child to receive love? Because when we answer that question, we see the behaviors that we still do today. And it's not to say that they're all wrong and they all need changing, because many of them won't.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the question is which of those serve us and which of those don't serve us. That honesty is where the work is, because we don't have to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that tree is perfect.
Yeah.
And all of that tree grew because that's how it had to, right? So we can't just chop it down. We just need to mold it a slightly different way, you know, and maybe trim the branches that are sticking into us.
Yeah. Yeah. And so building that ability to connect to yourself through radical self-honesty and your true self, does your communication with others naturally improve? Or is that like you're I find very intentional with your communication. You've cultivated that, or has it been something that has just been a byproduct of bettering your communication with yourself?
I think I realized very early on the power of communication. And
what was it that dropped in that realization early on?
I think I realized, from a very young age that you could communicate things in different ways. Like you can communicate the same thing in different ways and get very different responses. And so for me, it almost became a game of how do I phrase something in order to get the response that I want. And also, I think I was very blessed. We've talked a lot about my family history, but I'm, and I will say very fortunate to have a very, very difficult mother who would react very differently given different scenarios. So I would say also almost a survival mechanism as a child of learning how do I say things in order to keep the peace or keep this person happy and quiet, but still voice my opinion or still, have some kind of say in what's happening and what's going on. So I think probably I learned very young the power of communicating. And also I think understanding that if you communicated well and if you presented well, you could walk into any room and do anything, and it didn't matter where you came from or how much money your parents had or what side of town you were from, because I grew up in London and in East London, and it was very much, people would say to you, where are you from? And you'd say East London, and then you'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
So you could, but I could change all of that by presenting it in a certain way and communicating in a certain way. And having, there's power in that. There's absolute power in that.
Yeah, I love that. And so blowing all of that into one glass bowl where we've got our potential, we've got all this care, we've got this radical self-honesty, it's starting to make sense for me, this importance of redefining success for ourselves. Because so much of it is shaped by external factors, whether it's our childhood, I love that. And that's such a potent question. Like, who did I have to become in order to receive love as a child? Wow. I'm sure a few creases. I'm sure a few creases went in there. And so, learn, having that, and then the deep empathy, and then, realizing that there is a blank slate there somewhere underneath, under all those folds with our infinite potential. From that place, how do we begin to define success for ourselves? How do we really recalibrate, Steph, to going, okay, maybe what I've been charting hasn't been the best for me. And how do I even begin to go, where do we begin in terms of redefining success when there are such clear models around us, but we know that they don't serve us? Where do we go? What do we do?
I would just say not clear models, defined models. There are very defined models that are around that we can just go, okay, that's success. Okay, that's success. I think the way that we work out what success looks like for us is by really questioning what lights us up and what makes us feel happy, and when we're alive, when we feel most alive. So if you can pick 3 points in time when you feel absolutely most alive, recognizing what they are, identifying them, and then questioning how we get more of that in our everyday life, and what steps we need to take and what changes we need to take in order to increase those things in our life. So I'll give you an example. I remember, when I came back into the corporate world, being at this company, and I was fighting so hard for, the team leader promotion. And I was putting my hand up for every opportunity, and I was taking on all the extra responsibilities, and I was never had a sick day, and I was, a single parent at the same time. And I was like, I'm doing everything I can. And I kept getting looked over, and I kept getting looked over. And then I remember one day just looking across at one of the ladies there who was a team leader, and she was miserable and so stressed. And so not in alignment with herself in any way, that she wasn't a nice person to be around because she was angry, right? And I remember having this realization and going, is that what I'm fighting for? Is that what I'm working so hard for, that position? That's
to step into those shoes? Yeah.
Am I mad?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I remember thinking, that is not what I want at all. I moved to another company, springboarded straight into a management position, and kept going from there, right? And then my intention the whole time was to be able to work as far up the corporate ladder as I could, so that I could step back into a part-time or a job share role and spend more time at a much higher salary level with my son. That was always my intention, right? I had a really strict 5-year plan. What I want is to earn enough money on a part-time basis to be able to work that part-time basis. That's my aim. And that was really awesome. And I did that, and that was great. And then I got made redundant, and I was like, yay, this is amazing. And then, it was an interesting thing that happened. The last kind of 2, I would say even 3 jobs that I had, I knew very clearly, right, that I needed to be working for myself. I knew that. I'd run my own before, but I wasn't ready to step out. It's tough to step out of the corporate world. Like you said, that pay packet, right? And, single parent as well. I was like, this is tough. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do it. So I kept going. I kept
and
taking
the responsibilities
these
of being a parent are so real. That
it's a different ball game.
Taking
right?
a risk is not just your risk isn't just your risk profile for yourself. It's you got to factor other people into it.
And you have to take those responsibilities seriously, right? Because it's absolutely on you. So anyway, that all happened, and I ended up, I was like, right, well, if you've been made redundant, like, how often do you get, almost a year's salary dumped into your bank account and someone says, thank you very much, see you later? I said to my son, I remember having a great conversation with my son, and he said, I said, I'm going to start my own business. This is what I'm doing. This is the plan, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I'm sure you've thought of this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. He said, have you considered just putting that money in the bank and getting another job? And I said, yes, of course I have. That's a very logical thing to do. I said, but if I don't do this now in this scenario, when will I ever? How could I not do it now? Like, that would just be ridiculous, right? So I can't remember where we started on the question.
You were saying it was almost, and what I'm hearing is like destiny's always knocking. Like there was always always emerging through you, but you never, like, you kind of knew that was what was meant to be happening. But
it had to be the right time.
Yeah,
it had to be the right time, and I had to get through the fears that were keeping me in place, because we all have those fears, and I think now, I mean, I run the two businesses, but I get to, have this beautiful farm out a few hours away, and I get to live, in a tiny house on a farm that is stunning. And, if you asked me 10 years ago if I was going to live on a farm in a tiny house and have goats and avocado trees and sheep, I would have told you were insane. Absolutely. But through the process of getting to
redefining success. Yeah.
That is success to me, is working less, as in not having to be in a specific place at a specific time, and being able to spend more time outside in nature, and being able to spend more time having amazing conversations. Those are the three things that light me up, right? Having freedom is such a massive value for me. It's one of my hugest, I can't live without, the idea of things holding me in place is just not something that I can abide. And freedom, I absolutely need. As much as I need communication and conversation, I need freedom, right? So I've realized that, and I've instilled more of that in my life. I've realized that I love communication. I love interesting conversations. So I've cultivated this business of Unfold, which allows me to just have amazing conversations with people all day, every day, which light me up and have a significant impact on their lives as well. What could be better for me personally in my life and who I am and what I define as success? There is nothing better than that. Nothing. But it's not the same. It won't be the same for you. It won't be the same for someone else. And that's why we have to do the work and finding out what it is that really lights us up.
Yeah. I think you and I touch wood are really blessed, because conscious conversations, freedom-oriented conversations, both light both of us up. And it is really special when you do find someone that mirrors back the same passion, because you can really grow something in there as well. It's always a jewel when you meet someone that's like, yeah, I get it. And it's like, yeah, I get it. And it's like, oh my God, it's such a blessing and such a treasure. It is such.
Let's do this forever and ever. Hours and hours and hours. And talk at the same time.
I'm going to start closing the podcast, because we literally could do this forever and ever and ever.
You should.
And actually, to be honest, I do look forward to doing this forever and ever and ever. It's yeah, Steph, it truly is. There's no real short way to put this, but I'm going to try and be concise about it, which is, it's an absolute honor. Yeah, like walking this life with your wisdom, your presence, your grace by my side. Like having a sister like you on this path is, there's no real succinct way to put it. Like my heart can really just wants to be like, I love you. It's really what's in there.
Yeah.
And it's more than just the fact that you're an awesome human. It has a lot to do with the fact that you do care. It's got a lot to do with your ability to listen. It's also got a lot to do with you walking your walk in life, and just being able to witness and see, yes, like I'm all the parts crazy, and watching someone else follow their crazy completely into the unknown, which is, the lights of freedom are just shining so brightly in that space, knowing that, we hear a call, and that it is possible to claim success for yourself and redefine it and make it what it is for you. And yes, it takes some work to look deep inside and start to go, okay, which way does the pencil want to move from deep within me in order to write this script? It's daunting, because you're watching it write stuff and you're like, what the fuck is that? Like, and just, like having you walk that with such grace and such efficacy, such prowess, it's a real blessing to receive. So I want to thank you for sharing yourself so openly and abundantly here today, but also thank you for the lifetime's worth of work that you've put into this conversation, but then also your walk in life, Sister Beth. Thank you so much for you.
You're so welcome. And I echo so many of those sentiments, because, such a soul brother, and gosh, my heart expands too. And I just genuinely have so much love for you and for everything that you're doing. And I love this beautiful space and community that you've created. And I just want to be like your number one fan of everything that's happening in your world. So much love.
Spoken like the true unfolding supporting coach that you are. Guys, please, I'll put a link to Unfold Consulting in the show notes. Please, if you're anything that sort of struck a chord there, do go check it out. Steph is a wealth of wisdom. I know you can drop in, book a call, see what she's up to, and see if she can support you on your path further. I cannot recommend dropping in for a call highly enough. Like I've said in this episode already, some of those questions, some of the conversations that I've had with Steph have truly altered the course and my trajectory on my journey, and life is so much better for it. So please do check it out. They're in the show notes. And as always, on behalf of myself and the Inspired Evolution Tribe, Steph, we are wishing you the best always.
All love.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.